When a man took the first step on the moon 50 years ago, he was standing on the shoulders of giants. There were thousands of people working behind the scenes on the Apollo 11 mission. The rocket scientists, the mathematicians, the mechanics, the engineers developed the technology to make it possible to safely transport the astronauts to the moon and back. The Mission Control Center in Houston was monitoring the entire Apollo 11 operation 24/7, ready to step in and help the astronauts at any point. And how do we know all that? Because of a very important group of people, the journalists and the reporters. Did you know that there were over 3,000 journalists present at the moment of the Apollo 11 launch into the space from Cape Kennedy? And that moment alone was televised to 25 million people in the United States alone. It brought us all together. It was a really magical moment. I'm still having the goosebumps looking at a picture like this today when I see the entire families, friends, coworkers, and sometimes even complete strangers gathered in front of the few televisions available in 1969. And looking at that picture, I'm also wondering, what if the moon landing happened today, James?
Well, it might look a little different, right? Maybe it looks a bit more like this.
Well, this image is so different. Nobody's even paying attention to the TV in front of them. Everyone is on their own device, seems distracted. What's going on?
Well, that was my first impression too, right? They're not looking at the screen, they're playing with their devices, but media is different nowadays, right? The kid with the phone, he's maybe reading an article about the moon landing and the milestones that are being accomplished in real time. He's getting push notifications, he's sharing that content with his friends on social media, same with the laptop. You know, everyone is consuming the content in a way that's suited to them, and they're interacting with it, right? It's a personalized experience. After all, push notifications and interactive infographics didn't exist in 1969.
My name is Justyna. I'm a go-to-market manager at Firebase in San Francisco. And in my day-to-day role, I listen to customers such as yourselves every day, and I help you get onboarded to the Firebase platform and use it together with other Google SDKs.
Hi, and I'm James Daniels, Developer Relations with Firebase. When I'm not at conferences like this or meetup groups, meeting awesome developers like yourselves, I'm often splunking around on GitHub and sending pull requests and reviewing things for our open source SDKs.
And today we would like to talk to you about how the media industry has transformed over the years. It all begins with audience engagement. And comparing the two pictures we just showed you, it's clear that the way we engage with media and content today is very different than it was in 1969. We have more hardware choices. We have tablets, mobile devices, so we can interact with media in a different way. We also have different content sources. On top of the official newspapers and televisions, we also have social media, we have blog posts. So things have changed. But what remains constant is the power of the great story, such as moon landing. It still brings us all together. What has changed is how we want to engage with that story. Then there are the most successful media platforms today. They are doing two things to engage their users. First, they allow them to personalize their content experience. And second, they allow them to interact with the content. And content personalization is super important to Sky UK, a British television and online content streaming platform. They are currently working with Firebase on modernizing their technology infrastructure to be able to deliver fluid and immediate mobile experiences with their many apps to their many users. And it's great to be working with them. The industry pioneers, such as Sky UK, they have really mastered content personalization at scale and make content interactive. And by doing those two things, they have no problem converting their users into paid subscribers.
Speaking of media industry innovators, we'd like to tell you the story of a 200-year-old French newspaper that has completely changed how they interact with their audience and reinvented their business model. Le Figaro became one of the first newspapers in France who successfully navigated the transition from print to digital media content distribution. Le Figaro chose Firebase as their main app development platform, currently using 11 of our 18 products to deliver personalized content across their 11 applications, iOS, Android, and web. Let's start with the content personalization, sticking with the moon landing as an example of the narrative that we'll be personalizing for our users.
So the moon landing took 8 days. So it was physically impossible, even for the most devoted fans, to stay glued to their screens and to follow the astronaut's journey for the entire duration of the time. And that's where push notifications come in super handy, because they allow the media publishers to send personalized notifications to their user base and notify them about the upcoming major milestones. So let's see how we can customize this story for two of our users, James and Justyna. And let's assume we are about to reach the boost out of the Earth orbit milestone. So as you may recall from our introductions, James and I have quite different roles at Firebase. So it's fair to assume our personal interests are also quite different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're business development, right? So you're used to playing with numbers, focusing in on that. I imagine that you used to be really good with numbers always, right? Probably interested in physics and math in school.
Yeah, in fact, math and physics were my favorite subjects at high school. If any of my teachers are watching this live video stream, kudos to you for everything you taught me. So in my personalized notifications about the Earth orbit boost, I would like to know the speed at which the astronauts were moving, which was a whopping 39,000 kilometers per hour. So those raw numbers are perfectly fine for me. I would even add maybe acceleration and a bit of other details if we had space. But for someone like James, I don't know if raw numbers really resonate with you. Let's see how we could personalize that notification for someone like James. He travels a lot. How many conferences have you spoken at just this year?
Oh, probably something on the order 20, 30, something like that.
Right, so you do spend a lot of time on the planes. So what if I told you that if you could move at the speed with which Apollo 11 boosted out of the Earth orbit, 39,000 kilometers per hour, it would only take you 15 minutes to get to Madrid from our office in San Francisco.
That's crazy. And thank you very much for putting that big number into context for me.
You're most welcome. Now, let's take a look under the hood and see what technology infrastructure made it possible for Le Figaro to deliver that type of notification at scale to their users. So everything starts with user authentication. And Firebase Auth supports many different ways of authenticating your user, including anonymous authentication. So I'm not yet a paid subscriber to Le Figaro. I'm just browsing. I may have stumbled upon their website or maybe opened one of their apps, but I would like to try the service. But I don't want to spend minutes of my precious time putting down my name, phone number, email. I don't want to even share the data with them. Not yet. So the beauty of Firebase authentication is that the moment I stumble on their website, I will receive a unique user ID. And thanks to that user ID, I can immediately start subscribing to the topics of my interest. And those topics will be stored in Cloud Firestore, which is a real-time NoSQL database. It supports many different data structures. And one of the data structures we can put in Firestore is a user profile. So as you can see on the screen, my user profile is pretty basic right now. I didn't even submit my email address. I just have this user ID. But I can already subscribe to 3 types of notifications. So of course, breaking news world, relevant for everyone. And then aerospace and astronomy, that's perfect for me. I don't think that would be a little too much for James. So now, once I experience the content that Le Figaro delivers to me, and I'm ready to convert into a paid subscriber, it's going to be super easy to seamlessly do it with Firebase. So now you can see my user profile. I added my phone number and my email, but it's all my topic subscriptions are still the same. Now, the first step in subscribing to personalized notifications is once my profile is saved into Cloud Firestore, that event triggers a Cloud function that in turn lets Cloud messaging from Firebase know there is a new user, and here are the 3 topics she is interested in. Perfect. Everything is set and ready to go. So now, when a journalist publishes a new article, it's also going to be saved into Cloud Firestore. Super flexible database. It can store complex data structures such as articles. And here you can see in the topics section, there are the keywords that tell you which article it is about. So the moment the journalist pushes this article to production, and what's really cool, the journalist can actually push an article to production without involving development teams. That event triggers another Cloud function that tells Cloud messaging to send a personalized notification to Justyna, because this is an article about astronomy. I will find it super interesting. And I'm super happy with this experience. I'm ready to convert and be a paid subscriber of Le Figaro notifications. So the architecture we walked you through was the exact architecture Le Figaro did to deliver personalized notifications at scale to their subscribers. Now, you may wonder, when we approach a big event, maybe Mars landing, hopefully in a few years we all get to experience that, there will be lots of users who want to receive those personalized notifications. So James, can you tell us more about scalability of Cloud messaging?
Yeah, definitely. So, right, we land on Mars, and Le Figaro wants to push a notification about this event to their users, right? Maybe there's 8 billion people on the planet. I mean, imagine the moon landing had 600 million people watching it on televisions. And the world's population was a lot smaller then. They didn't have phones in everyone's pockets. So, you know, it would have a lot of users. So the best thing about the architecture that Justyna just presented is it's completely serverless, right? It can scale from 0 to, you know, virtually infinity. And it relies on the Google Firebase Cloud Messaging solution to deliver those push notifications at scale. And can we handle that? Well, I think we can. So FCM currently delivers 800 billion messages a day to our users on behalf of our developers for free.
That's a big scale. We could actually, thank you. We could deliver 100 personalized notifications to every single person that's alive on the planet Earth today, and we would still have some buffer.
Yeah, a little wiggle room. So we covered personalized content, right? Let's talk about interactive. So say I wanted some sort of infographic, right? I had the article on the moon landing, and I wanted our users, when they came to the page, to be able to tell where the astronauts are along their path. So what might that look like? So say we have, you know, their speed, how much time is remaining, how many kilometers are left in their path. Maybe milestones that they've already achieved, milestones yet to hit, and make it real time, right? So the number of kilometers keep ticking down. So how would we build this, right? Again, start with authentication. The great thing here is using auth, we can actually protect our Firestore from someone pulling down all the data, right? This could be anonymous authentication. They don't need to log in with their account. So after the user has authenticated, you reach out to Cloud Firestore, get the data. And then, you know, it real-time syncs to the user again. So let's look at this data structure. Very simple. We have a named infographic object with the current position, speed, milestones, and maybe last updated. So say the API from NASA is a little slow or you're updating it manually, that last updated timestamp could allow you to tween in between the different milestones. And then when those values change, you have that real-time nature, right? So gone is this pull to refresh experience. If the user's on the page, right, they're going to get all those updates, and they're going to see those astronauts ticking along their path. Now, there's a problem here, right? The Apollo journey, it takes a week. So if you land on that page and you're watching the astronauts tick along their path for a week, not realistic, right? You're going to go to that page for a couple seconds, and then you're going to bounce. So how do we reduce this churn? Well, maybe we could actually add things like a questionnaire, survey content, puzzles, games on the page. So in this case, let's do a quick little trivia question, right? Or multiple of them. And the user can answer. So I'm going to guess Gemini. Well, I was wrong. The correct answer was Columbia for the command module of Apollo. And using that real-time nature, as I'm watching this page after I answered this, I can see these values change over time, right? They're interactive. It shows me the live polling data from the users answering questions alongside of me, making this a very cool experience. And I'll likely stick on that page for longer, interact with it longer. So let's look at building this. So we'll add in sub-collections survey questions, right? We'll put in information such as the options, correct answer, and we'll keep track of the number of users that have answered each question and the total answers. And those together are going to give us the statistics that we need to build those percentages, right? Pretty simple division. And architecturally, it looks just like the previous one, right? The users authenticate, they go to Cloud Firestore, it streams back in real time. Now, this has its limits, namely that Firestore has a 1 QPS sustained document write rate. So if you're writing to the same document and you have lots and lots of users on the same page all writing to that document, say they're incrementing those numbers client side, you know, we get a couple thousand people on that page, we have trouble scaling. So what we can actually do is we could instead write their answers to Cloud Firestore as opposed to incrementing those numbers. And then we can trip a Cloud function and we could do a counter, right? So we could increment on the function side. Maybe we shard that counter to get over the QPS. And it goes back to Firestore and then back to the user. So here, you know, we've managed to scale by writing those answers to the database. And if you run into this problem a lot, then actually the distributed counter Firebase extension is for you. Keep watching this afternoon to learn more about that. Now, the downside here for me is, you know, we've hit that scale, but maybe I don't care about the user's answers. We're writing a lot of things to the database. Ultimately, let's look at our data structure and say, yes, we could fix the scale by writing those out. But how do we hone in on the problem itself? It's really those counters, right? When we have millions of users on the page, those are going to be ticking up and down rather quickly. So maybe we can restructure our database so we don't have to worry about that. So instead, let's just keep the information that we're interested in the database. The number of people, the ratio of people that answered each question, right? Think of Firestore this way. It's not only your database, but it's your API. What information are you presenting on the page, and organize around that. So let's look at how this is built. Instead of directly writing to Firestore, I'm going to call a Cloud function from the client side. And maybe I use memory store. That way I can work in memory. I can jot down their answers, put it in a counter, not have to worry about, you know, storing those permanently. Then I have a Cloud function on a cron that trips in there. That writes out to Firestore, and then the user gets their real-time updates.
That sounds really great, but I thought we were focusing on 100% serverless solutions. And memory store, don't you have to set it up, maintain it, apply security patches?
That's fair. I've worked with memory store a lot, databases like that, and I'm used to setting those up, provisioning them, and scaling them. But yeah, let's focus on serverless. And there's actually some great tools in the GCP toolbox for this. One that I often reach for is Cloud Data Flow. It's going to build this sort of analytics pipeline for us. And it's functional. So we can do groups and sorts and counts. And we can do these on Windows, right? So the windows allow us to work around these QPS limits. So we could do counters every 20 seconds, add everything up, and then write it back to Firestore every 20 seconds. So simply, right, we just plug this into the architecture here. And that gets us to where we wanted to go. And ultimately, this problem of scalability, right, it depends on your usage, your data structures, and your access patterns. So it's a complex problem, but we have tools that will help you get there. Now, we might have gotten a little ahead of ourselves talking about how to take this infographic to tens of millions, maybe 1 billion users, right? Little crazy. But what we're trying to get across here, right, is these are things that Figaro has dealt with, right? They want these infographics to scale from 0 to huge bursts of users, and they don't want to have to manage a lot of servers. And they need that churn reduced. They want that interactive content. They want that rich client experience.
Yeah, we may have gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves here. Also, let's keep in mind that Le Figaro is a newspaper. The majority of their employees are journalists. In fact, they have 400 journalists working at Le Figaro today. So you may wonder how many developers support that team of journalists and create those interactive infographics that James just described. 5? Someone in the audience just mentioned 5. Well, the actual answer is 3. Technical journalist is a hybrid between a journalist and a developer, and they solely specialize in data visualizations. But they have 400 journalists sourcing them data points. But the scaffolding that they were able to create with Firestore and functions with readily available building blocks was so easy that they could do more with fewer teams. So no servers, everything is serverless, and it's all real time. Well, as a disclaimer, Le Figaro has 11 apps across iOS and Android, as James mentioned earlier. So they do have a team of 50 developers supporting those apps. But infographics are supported with just three people. And besides Le Figaro, another media innovator, Sky UK, whom we introduced earlier in our talk, they are also moving towards a real-time, event-driven architecture. They are working closely with Firebase on that. And content discovery recommendations, personalizing the experience and tailoring it specifically to your users' needs is really the future of how the media industry is engaging their customers. The media industry is obviously very different today than it was during the moon landing time in 1969.
50 years ago, it took technology and personal courage to pull off the moon landing. Today, the same is true for every major milestone, every innovation. Le Figaro and Sky are innovators in this space. All of you in this room, you're all innovators. You're all playing with new technology, taking risks, trying to build your application and get to market faster. And all of the explorers and innovators need a team. The Apollo 11 crew, they were assisted by thousands and thousands of people. They didn't sew their own spacesuits. They didn't build their own rocket. They didn't catch themselves when they landed in the Pacific. And Le Figaro and Sky, ultimately, they were assisted by Firebase. They didn't have to rack and stack their own servers. They accelerated their time to market and innovation with ready-to-use building blocks from Firebase.
It is our mission at Firebase to support all of you innovators in your quest of building, running great applications. So whether you are about to develop a new app, turn a great idea into a scalable app and reach millions of users, and you're looking for app components like authentication, databases, functions, or maybe machine learning capabilities, Firebase has your back. Now, if you already have an application in your store and you have thousands of users, and you have to keep innovating, you want to add a new feature, but you are afraid you're going to disrupt the experience for your existing users, we also help you monitor user experience at scale, and you can roll out those features gradually, monitoring how they are experienced by your users. And lastly, the Firebase Engage family of products will help you reach new user segments. If you would like to run experiments with different price points or engage users with personalized notifications, we can be also your mission control center. We could be your Houston. Well, that wraps up our talk. It was a lot of fun to work on it with James, but we're out of time. Well, it was a great virtual journey to the moon and back, and it took us only 25 minutes.
Well, I learned something today. That's the amount of time that it would take me to travel from San Francisco to Madrid and back, right?
And back, almost back, and grab some tapas along your side. Well, that was the last joke for today. Thank you so much for attending this talk, and I would also like to extend huge gratitude to Figaro and Sky, who allowed us to share their transformational journeys with all of you today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.